Hi, I'm Jennifer Carter, and thank you for joining me on a podcast for parents, teachers, and administrators. Today's conversation should be a good one, and I'm sure it's something on your mind. So let's get to it.
My name is Jennifer Carter, and welcome to Mrs. C's podcast for parents, teachers, and administrators. Lakiesha, can you just introduce yourself? I know you're from SNL Foster Family Agency, but give us a proper introduction of what your agency does and who you are.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Lakiesha Hohl. I actually started SNL in 2021. I was a former social worker and just really found the need to serve in a holistic way that I was unable to serve under the agency that I previously worked for. So I started my own. And what we do, we pretty much serve those that have any connection to the foster care system, and we serve in a holistic approach. So what that means is pretty much preserving, the family bond and breaking generational barriers.
Tell me more about what generational barriers means for you and your agency.
Yes. So generational barriers is pretty much teaching skills, trades, and that looks like a combination of just being around families surrounding former foster youth with a loving village. A lot of times what they do is they go into foster care. They are, I don't want to say the word torn, but in some situations,
I think you are torn.
I'm glad you agree, from their families. And, sometimes it's limited contact that they receive from them. We've seen that a lot of them do come from large sibling sets. So there are not a lot of resource parents out there that have the space to take on, say, 3 children. Sometimes we've seen sibling sets as many as 6, which is so sad. And, they're put into different homes. Allowing them to, even though there are court rules that they have to have sibling visits, it's not always that easy. And so, again, going back to that, they're transitioning, right, from what they knew, going into new homes, losing those customs, sometimes even traditions that they were holding on to, and put into new different situations. So holding on to the culture, the customs that they were familiar with, anything that's positive, but reinforcing additional positive resources and activities into their life. That is what reinforcement is. That is what I feel like is breaking those generational barriers. We're going in and creating a healthier bond to what they may have known, and while they're transitioning through moving through home after home after home, unfortunately.
So let me ask you some kind of logistical questions around that. What's the process? So what triggers someone losing their children and being put into foster care? And once that trigger happens, what then happens to the children? Because, I watch TV, and on Law and Order, there's some nice lady in there like Mrs. Jones will take you. Well, yes. We never know where Mrs. Jones goes or what happens.
Exactly.
Right? Yes. So what actually is the process or the I hate to use journey. Everyone says journey now, but from the moment that the family is separated, and then what can trigger it through to, when they're reunited.
Yes.
Reunified, right?
Yes, reunified. So here's the thing. I previously worked for, it's a foster family agency that we are identified as FFAs. That's in short terms. We work side by side with the county. So we're like a second set of eyes, right? So initially, the county would receive the call. They would go out and do their investigation. And then if the child needs to be moved from the home, then they would move from the home. If they don't have enough resource parents directly within their county, then they reach out to foster family agencies. A lot of times when we get a referral, sometimes we would get referrals in the evening, where it's kind of like that emergency placement. If they can't place, unfortunately, the child has to sleep in the county office, where they have
Like in the office?
yes, they have like cots.
Oh my
They try
gosh.
to make it very kid friendly. However, it is
It's
an
an
office
office.
when it's said and done, right? If they are able to place, then they will place them in a resource home. Then that's when, us as a resource family agency would go out. We would connect with the social worker of the county and, go from there if it's one of our homes that the child was placed in.
I have to pause you. I'm
Yes.
stuck on this office thing.
Yes.
So if the kid, so in a situation where there's 7 children, they would all sleep in the office.
And this depends. So imagine okay, so say it's a sibling set of 3. And as a social worker, we've of course seen that, say there is an older child and there's that sweet little baby. I can guarantee that sweet little baby is going to get a placement before the 8-year-old, right? So chances are that sweet little baby may get a placement right away. So,
so you're saying, because again, I'm trying to understand that a sibling set of 3 kids has to be placed. From that moment, they may be separated. And where a baby goes to a house with strangers and the other kids sleep in an office with strangers.
Yes. So it all depends on, say, for instance, there's a family that a foster family agency has approved, right? And they maybe have a capacity for 2 kids. They have a home study, which is a thorough evaluation of what, they are able to take in and what they are also requesting that they would take in as far as children. And say they're saying ages 0 to 5. But say there's a sibling set where there's a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, and say a 9-year-old. Now, there are times when you can kind of, ask the family, would you be open? And then you might have to go in and kind of do an addendum and talk to the county to see if they would keep them together. But say if that family is adamant and they have the room, then chances are that family could get the 1-year-old and say the 5-year-old, but that 9-year-old is going to be placed somewhere else. So that is one of the reasons.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So we are licensed for a foster family agency. However, during this transition, there were some things that kind of helped us to reanalyze because of situations like this and focus on how can we serve without the red tape? Because this situation of splitting siblings up, that is red tape to me. And that to me will cause further trauma when you're thinking about education and allowing them to have a healthy bond.
It would have never occurred to me that basically you can reject one of the siblings and take the rest. And I mean, I know this because we've had children in our centers where, they have other siblings. But I think just in practical terms, I've never thought about how, and it's always this way, how little sister is really bonded with biggest sister. And then that secondary, so mom is unreliable. That secondary person is no longer around either. And I think it just, we deal with the behavior, but it just never has occurred why that behavior is until this very moment. So I'm flummoxed, not really flummoxed, I guess, because I can still speak, but I'm definitely gobsmacked. That's probably a better, keyword to use, but I can't believe that.
Yeah. And again, social worker, as a former social worker, it's always well, let me take that back. It should always be in the best interest of the child, right? So we are supposed to examine all of our options of resource families that would take in this child that would be a good fit for the child. Now, if we have limited resources and space, then that's when, of course, that's where they get split up. And I just feel like it just happens all too often.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Often.
Okay, so what triggers a family being split like this? What are some of the conditions that children are even coming from?
Mm-hmm. We see a lot of, it's very vague. We see a lot of cases where it says general neglect. Now, general neglect can be so many things across the board, right? And that is why I honestly started this agency too, because when you think of general neglect, okay, there could be abuse there, which is definitely a reason to take a child away. There could be so many things. However, general neglect to me can also be, and again, this is the counties that are determining, why these children should be taken away. However, say a family is low income and they do not have the resources that they need. No one's providing the resources or the training that they need to help them to get on their feet. And just say there's a red flag from a school or somebody that feels like, this case needs to be taken, right, to be identified. It needs to be reported. Depending on what they find, that child can possibly be taken and removed from their family. And what I have seen, again, every case is different, but what I have seen is we put so much as a county, as the state of California, we put so much into training resource parents to adopt, to foster. But I don't feel like we put so much into the actual parents, ones that may be really trying to get their children back. And so as an agency, that's why we try to do also, not only do we serve foster and former foster youth, but we do preventative care too. If there is a low income family that's really struggling, right? Say one's looking for a new job, or maybe they didn't receive those parenting skills that they really needed. We want to go in there and teach those skill sets. So that way it can strengthen that family bond. It can give them the resources that they need. So hopefully they don't ever encounter anything like that.
So can I say what I think I'm hearing, which is sometimes children end up being taken from their parents just because their parents don't have the adequate skills and knowledge to raise children.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I would imagine that people who are in foster care and haven't necessarily gotten support throughout foster care might be especially vulnerable because they haven't had consistent parents. So if I'm 12, I've been kind of flown under the radar with my parent who wasn't really helpful in my development, and I'm 12 or 14. And then I go to a foster family. Well, first I sleep in an office, and then I eventually end up in a foster family and, maybe move from place to place. By the time I'm 18, which is when you age out, correct?
So
I haven't really learned some of those, like, here are better ways to take care of somebody's skills.
Yes. And just to go back to so they technically age out at 21. However, a lot of them may not like their environments. And once they're 18, they're like, I'm out of here. Or I've even had it where I've seen resource parents kick them out after they graduate high school, which is
wow.
like 18. So again, that affects like the skill set. It affects a lot, right? Now, if we're looking back what you mentioned about, say, that 14-year-old, 12, 14-year-old, teenager, even then, if they're not in a stable home and they're fighting to find love and comfort, there's also the potential that it's a teen pregnancy. And then now
Mm,
they have this child that they're trying to raise in maybe a group home setting that takes in young, pregnant teenagers. And if there's, again, not getting the skill set, not learning how to become a proper parent, they can possibly lose their child because of neglect, right? Because they're trying to navigate life the way that they knew it.
right.
Intervening at that time. There's no intervention. And here's this child that technically does not belong to the state because they have not given up their rights. But they don't know how to be a parent. So they already have a social worker. So eyes are on them. And they, again, lose their rights to parent that child. Another thing, say they are parenting that child, but because of the skill set, because of the lack of education that they may have, not received, how can you possibly go out and function and provide once you age out of foster care for you and your child? So there's a lot of things to consider there.
And would you say that this is an often occurrence?
Absolutely.
And I would imagine dads, because our culture is changing a little, right?
Yes.
Where it's okay for moms to walk away in a way that maybe when you and I were younger. So we find that they're dads with a kid and they're like,
Yes.
I got nothing. And we have to help because I feel like there's even more limited resources for dads with children.
Yes.
And there's homes for pregnant women, but I've not heard of a home for single inadequate dads.
Yes, you're correct. I don't think I've came across that yet either. Yeah.
But you have seen dads as a primary carer and I'm in this position.
Yes. And I've even seen, which I absolutely love, I've seen young mom and dads trying to work it together, work together to take care of the child. But either one of them, absolutely have, all the skills that they need to be able to break away and say, okay, we could do this on our own. So that's our main focus. It really does take a village.
Yeah.
To help support. So that way, hopefully they could get on their feet and they can come back and say, hey, I made it through this because of all of these wonderful people that came in my community to support me.
So how can we be a village and be supportive of agencies like yours? And tell us where you're located. I didn't ask that.
Yes, we're located in Fontana. And we do serve like Riverside, San Bernardino. We do serve parts of LA County as well. We have a lot of, say, youth that decided to go to college or a trade school, and that's where we support them when they go off.
So what can we as the village do? What's the most helpful things what are the most helpful things that people who are not traumatized, who have adequate skills and who have an abundance of resources, what is it that we could do to be of help to families that find themselves in these circumstances?
Yes, I love that. My number one answer is, again, it takes a village. So if anybody is out there and has like some type of expertise, join the village. We want to all come together and connect and teach these young ones and their families. So that way, again, we're going to work together to create this change and this shift and creating and breaking that generational barrier that has happened. Another thing is for some, especially in education, if you see, say, families that are low income, reach out to us. If you see a family and you're like, hey, this family really could use some of your support, let's sit together and figure out, do they need a car seat? Do they need, what are some things that they might need that can help to maybe reduce those risks, right? That's really what it's about, just coming together as a community.
Because I know that we have had parents try to leave without a car seat, for example, and we can't let a child go. And if they take the child as mandated reporters, which then becomes a giant snowball.
Yes.
So I can easily see where some things that are procedural turn someone's life into a whole nightmare.
Yes. And when you think of something like that simple car seat, right? Okay, we all know that a child, it's the law, and we want to keep our children safe. So they definitely should be in a car seat. But what's the root of that, right? Is it between I don't have food in my table? It's the cars, because car seats are expensive, right? So is it, okay, do I pay this $189 for a car seat? Or do I feed my family for the week? Or maybe it boils down to their family members used to do that. It was a quick trip around the corner and they're like, oh, it's okay. They don't need a car seat. They can lap it or whatever the case may be. Again, not in agreement with it, but why are you
see where you have to make those choices?
Yes. And, really understanding what are the repercussions for doing this?
Right. So, we're living in our world and we're making decisions. We don't realize sometimes some of us that have abundance, it's simple addition.
Yeah.
I have a kid, I'll add a car seat. I'll put that in my car. In fact, if we have 2 cars, then I'll add it. Simple addition. Yes. When you are under resourced, you are actually doing life calculus. I don't have a car seat. How can I function and get to work and get my child where they need to be without this? If I do this, then I do. And then it's a much more complicated solve than someone who has resources. Is there a way that we can amplify that so that people understand what we think is neglect is often that really complicated calculus?
Yes. I honestly think that it starts with, businesses like ourselves, right? If we know that there are potentially at-risk families, that we are educating them on this information before it happens, so they understand, hey, these are just basic parenting skills that we just want to make sure that you're aware of, and doing it in a loving and supported atmosphere where it doesn't feel like, they're being lectured, but it's just providing them hey, there's these resources out there. In case you need this, there are laws, maybe a simple gesture of providing a flyer that is, giving the ages of what car seat they should be in. Because I've also seen that where families can't purchase an upgraded car seat because the child now doesn't fit the weight requirement, but they're still in the other car seat. Which to me, it's still like riding in without a car seat because they now are over the weight limit. So maybe seeing, okay, little Johnny looks like he should be transitioning into a new car seat. Let's provide this flyer and maybe do a workshop on, car seat sizes that fit your child's needs, and then giving the resources of places, if they qualify, that provide free car seats as well. So it's giving them the information, but giving them the resources if they ultimately cannot afford a car seat.
Well, you tell me, what kind of things do you do at your agency to help close that information gap so that parents have more information to make these choices that won't then escalate?
Yes. So one thing I love is we really wholeheartedly listen to our clients that we serve. And so we kind of like, we have a basis of what we do, but if we find that a need is coming up a lot, then we will add on that we provide that. We are a small agency, granted, so resources can be a little limited, but I say we're small but mighty because we've been blessed to get quite a lot of things. So for instance, we have a couple of programs that we do, and one is our Elevated Roots project. Mm-hmm. So that was born just from the lack of healthy foods that we've seen that our clients have access to. And so we are in partnership with Sandalwood Farms and Sanctuary. And we have actually had events on the farm just to teach about, coping skills to reduce like stress levels, also learning about foods and how we grow them. And our goal is to ultimately provide garden kits, especially for low income families where, say, live in an apartment. They can take these and they can start growing certain things in the comfort of their home. So they're not always having these canned goods. They're actually having fresh produce, right? So again, that was a need because we started realizing like there was a lot of talk about mental health and, a lot of our BIPOC community, we have a lot of stress going on, right? And so we're just trying to figure out like, okay, how can we serve in a holistic approach? Another thing that we've seen is, which is actually another reason why I started SNL, in the foster care system, not all kids get to pick what their room looks like. And so we started a My Bedding project, and that became My Bedding Kits, where they get customized bedding. So if someone's into dinosaurs, we will go out, get a comforter set, pillow, mattress, protector. They'll either get like some form of decor that goes along with that theme, and it moves with them, even if they move placements. And so that's been a huge success, even for our ones that are going into college, because they dorm and a lot of them don't get the necessities that they need. And so that's another way that we support. We have a full fledged closet in our agency where families can come in and shop. We have clothes, diapers. That's a huge thing. We're not in the business of just serving one time. I believe in let's serve multiple times to get you on your feet. So we have families that can go on our website, submit a request, we'll fulfill them, and then tell them to come into the office to come pick up their kit. And then they also have the opportunity to shop for additional items. So we try to serve where they are.
Nice. Well, if there's one takeaway that you think people should have from this conversation, what would that one takeaway be?
One thing that I would love people to know is that there's often a stigma when it comes to foster youth. That's not always true. And so I just ask that, I've heard that, a lot of foster kids, they'll just take, like they may not need it or they have enough things. And that's so not true. That's far from it. We've been to events and we will have former foster youth or young kids that say, I'll take this, I'll leave this for the next kid. And that's one thing I just wish that everybody understood, that they're not in the business to just take half the times they're provided with things they don't even want. It's just forced and given to them. So when giving to agencies like ourselves, like, please just remember that they have options, but a lot of times they take only what they feel like they need.
Yeah. Well, thank you for a really illuminating conversation. My takeaway is that there's so many different levels and so many different points where children are traumatized.
Yes.
And that I think we have to remember they really are children. It really is trauma. And it's really terrible. And when children are reacting to that trauma, it's not going to look like a fully developed person. It may be stealing or lying or promiscuity or crying or diarrhea, because they're going to experience that a lot different. And so, again, understanding that there's just a lot of points of trauma for kids, it's just crazy. But you are definitely doing God's work, and I commend you. How can people find you and help support your efforts?
Yes, thank you for those kind words, by the way. So you can find us at snlfosterfamilyagency.org. That is our website. We post events on there all the time that we're conducting in the community, as well as our phone number is 909-909-4087 if you wish to come out and volunteer.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate the conversation, Lakiesha. And again, you're doing terrific work, and please let us know how we can support.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
If you like what you heard, or even if you have some feedback, put a comment in our comment section. Be sure to like our page and make sure that you subscribe so that you can hear when the next video comes out. Thanks so much again for joining us.